あんたもしかしてプロミス
Impression weapons, short imps, are these things you unlock at player level 45. They are a new form of equipment that you can assign to a character. There are two types of imps, main imps and support imps. Main imps can only be equipped to main characters, and support imps can only be equipped to support characters. Each character can only be equipped with one imp at a time, and you can only equip one given imp to one character at a time. So for example, you can't equip Indra to multiple mains in the same party, and Alice here can't hold more than one imp. Each impression weapon can be upgraded individually. There are awakenings that you can increase the same way you can increase awakenings on your characters, by pulling duplicates of a specific imp. There are 6 total phases, the initial phase and also phase 1 to 5. You can collect duplicates on either the imp gacha or in some cases the Pandemonium shop, that way you can also get new imps. If you get more than 6 copies of the same one, you gain exchange materials for each duplicate you get, which you can use in either the exchange shop or the crystal shop. Other than just the normal awakenings, there are also spiritual awakenings for imps. These use these things that you get sometimes as random drops from Pandemonium, sometimes get in events, and can collect from one-time story missions. Also, you can purchase them in the Pandemonium material shop and the crystal shop. Each spiritual awakening of an imp increases its final damage dealt modifier and its final damage taken modifier. You can get each A tier imp up to spiritual awakening level 5 and each S tier imp up to spiritual awakening level 6. Keep in mind, spiritual awakenings are independent from the normal awakenings and can be maxed out even if you just have the base version of the imp. Here's a list of different spiritual awakening costs and its effects. The effects of the same level don't differentiate between A tier and S tier imps. Last but not least, you can upgrade the stats of each imp. You do this here in the Enhanced tab and use impression upgrade materials. These can be found in Pandemonium as random drops, the imp gacha, the Pandemonium shop, the crystal shop, breaking events, some event rewards, and in one-time story missions. Now, other than spiritual awakenings, the stat upgrades are capped by the awakening level of the imp. Normal A tier weapons can upgrade each stat up to level 50 and they gain 2 more levels of cap per awakening, meaning they cap out to level 60 stats. S tier weapons have a base cap of level 60 and the stats also gain 2 levels of cap per awakening, maxing them at level 70 stats. Here are 2 examples of max upgraded stats for both A and S tier weapons. Important to note is that up to level 30 stats, you just need impression dust for upgrades. After that, you will need green tier materials up to level 50, and after level 50 you will also need blue and purple materials to upgrade. Now, with all that covered, how do you use imps in battle? Simple. Support imps have a passive effect that lasts throughout the whole fight whenever the conditions are met. Main imps, on the other hand, need to be activated in battle. Each round you have 2 impression points to spend. A main imp either costs 1 or 2 points, depending on the imp itself, meaning that you can at best activate 2 main imps in the same turn. Main imps also have different impression energy levels. Each imp gains 1 energy per round, and each imp has its own starting energy. Awakening 2 imps can hold 1 energy of overcharge, while A5 imps can hold 2 energy of overcharge. With all the general stuff that you need to know about imps out of the way, we can start talking about each individual one. I'm just going into detail on the ones that truly matter. The others I'm just going to give you some quick overview. Let's start with Pandemonium imps and the very first imp you get in the game, Jean. You get a base copy of Jean from the Golden Time missions once you unlock player level 45. If you want to get more copies of her, you have to save up exchange crystals, since copies of her can only be acquired in the exchange shop. Jarn is a main AT impression weapon with a 1 energy cost, and upon activation resets the climax usage of a current team and modify the damage dealt modifier depending on the awakening level of the imp. Jarn can be activated after she collected 4 energy points and can basically reset 1 climax every 4 turns. She's a decent use for early level players and usable as a backup weapon if you don't have A5 Ouroboros. Next up we have the Shen Yin, a Pandemonium shop main A tier weapon that upon activation consumes a part of the current team's HP and applies a non-removable regen buff to all allies for 2 turns and costs 1 energy. You can use her effect after she collects 3 energy points, and you can basically use this effect every 3 turns. In my opinion, she's not of real use in any game mode, since the amount of HP you gain from her is pretty minuscule, and it's not like HP truly matter. Then we have Karna, a support A tier weapon that gives all allies a non-removable damage taken down buff every time the equipped team casts a 0 SP skill. The buff amount depends on the def stats of the equipped team. Since the buff needs some beefy def stats to be of any meaningful size, she's kinda useless, since at the point where you have such high def stats, you don't need the effect anymore anyway. So the best use of her you're getting is just purely for the stats. Lastly, we have Key of Solomon, another support weapon that gives you payback skill points whenever the equipped team casts cross skill and is below a certain HP threshold. Unfortunately, the threshold is so low that she's way too inconsistent to use. Again, the best use you're getting out of her is just purely for the stat boost. The most useless weapon of all has to be Coffin of Tutankhamun. At least they gave her a fitting name, given she's dead as fuck and never to be seen again. She is, or better was, an 8-tier support weapon that was released in the first Hatsune Miku collaboration event. However, that was the only time you could get her, and you could only get 1 copy of her in total. On top of that, her effect is so bad. The effect is that when the carrying team has a shield and gets attacked, the equipped team takes less damage, and there's a pretty low chance that the attacker loses a removable buff they have. That's it. Even the devs gave up on her. Now we go to the Gacha AT weapons. First we have Shield of Jingtian, a support weapon that heals the equipped team when they have a shield buff at the start of the turn. Whenever the shield they have is destroyed by the enemies, they all suffer bleed damage equal to a portion of the max HP of the equipped team. Her effect is based on shield. I think I don't need to say anything more about that, it's bad. Next up we got Muramasa, another support weapon. Now Mura's effect is pretty simple. When the equipped team attacks an enemy that has either a removable attack down or frail effect, that team has a chance to deal more damage. At least at A5 the chance is 100% and the extra damage is 22.5%. So she's one of the better AT weapons that you can somewhat feel comfortable investing in. Then we have Olive Wood, Club of Heracles, yet another support weapon. She functions similar to Mura except that she deals extra damage on enemies which have removable wound effects. Again at A5 the chance to trigger is 100% and the amount at that point is 28.1%. She used to be the better one of both of them in AoE teams, but now she's kinda useless since nobody's using wound comms anymore. Lamp of Nightingale is a main weapon that upon activation gives all allies a non-removable buff that increases all healing effects for 1 turn, and with High Awakenings she also removes 1 to 2 debuffs. She's a very niche use and I wouldn't recommend investing in her. Also prepare to pull like 69,000 dupes of her for no reason in particular. Wujui is another support weapon and one of the worst. Every time the equipped team attacks, it applies a stack of small bleed that stacks up to 3 times. And when the team casts a climax skill, it will remove all removable bleeds on the enemies and deal extra damage depending on the removed bleed. While we do have literally just one lineup in the entire game that can make any use of bleed, you can't even use this weapon there since it will remove the bleed in climax. And the only reason that team can make any use of bleed is by not removing the bleeds. So yeah, she's straight up useless. Next up we have Herbalist's Manual, yet another support weapon. Whenever the equipped team casts cross skill, all allies will be healed by a small amount depending on the tech stat of the equipped team, and all allies will gain a non-removable buff that enhances all bleed and backfire damage they deal. TLDR, lower level players might get some use of her from the heal, other than that she's pretty underwhelming. Finally we are starting to get to the better ones, because now we got Olympic Flame, another support weapon. Her effect is that at the start of a fight, the equipped team and the front enemy both gain a removable death-proof effect. While this weapon's usage is pretty niche too, it really does shine greatly in those situations. If you're wondering what use she is, well, the main use that she has is that she applies death-proof effect to the enemy. not yourself, making it so that stages where you have a score counter depending on the damage you deal, you may be able to do double the overkill damage thanks to her. And last but not least, the A tier weapon to end all other A tier weapons, Moral Tap. This small support imp is just like Muramasa and Olive, but other than the aforementioned ones, she has no requirements to meet other than the chance, and even that is 100% at Awakening 5 phase. So by then she's just straight up more damage you deal every time. But that's not the best about her. The best part about her is that instead of just being a damage modifier like the other ones, she collects all damage you deal in return with the unit, and at the end of the turn it applies a bleed damage to all the enemies to the portion of the damage you dealt. Now you may be wondering, if bleed is bad and the damage she deals is bleed, how the heck is she the best A tier weapon then? To put it simply, since the damage is done post attack, it functions not only as a new damage multiplier, it also works with things that normally don't benefit from damage multipliers, like the Kishana True Damage set and Kamineko's Climax True Damage, which is the entire reason she shits on all other weapons. Let's move to the S tier weapons finally, and we start from the worst to the best. First we get Aegis or Zeus, a support weapon. This one increases the attack stat of the equipped team by a portion of its death stat over a certain threshold of the equipped team for one turn whenever the team is attacked in the turn and is below a certain HP threshold. She's got a similar problem to Karna and Key of Solomon, and that is that the thresholds are just out of proportion and she's basically unusable. Even if she's an S tier weapon, the only real reason to use her is for the S tier level stats that are possible to reach, but even that would just be a waste of materials. Next up we got Vermilion Bird, a main weapon that, upon activation for 2 points, enhances the duration of all removable wounds, attack downs and later also frails by 1 turn that are applied within the next 2 turns, on top of also applying a non-removable bleed effect on all enemies for 2 turns. She used to be good, but now she's basically got replaced by way better weapons. Now we got Oriental Chivalry, another support weapon. At the start of a turn, for every 20% HP missing on any team in the fight, every ally gains a stack of her defense buff for 1 turn, for up to 12 stacks in total. And when the equipped team attacks, they will gain a buff that increases its damage dealt by every stack of the defense buff that the team has got. Funnily enough, it counts every team double, most likely due to the main character and support character both being below 20%. So you gain 2 stacks for every 20% HP missing on a team with both a main and support character. She's one of the best imps to use in events, especially in the ones where you can make use of Dual Blade Kirito Lamentum. Ming Hong, the imp that made Dual Blades Kirito the #1 event meta. This support weapon consumes 99.99% of the max HP of the equipped team at the start of a fight. In exchange for that, the team cannot die by any means possible for the first turn, and every time they would die they just trigger a death proof effect, leaving them with 1 HP alive. From the start of the second turn onwards, the equipped team heals a portion of the max HP at the start of every turn, and they gain a non-removable buff that increases their damage dealt and also increases the damage taken. Thanks to the death proof effect combined with a 99.99% HP consumption at the start of a fight, it became as easy as never before to kill off one of your Asanas without losing a team in a fight to trigger Dual Blade Kirito's Lamentum effect. However, this just works in stages where you get attacked at all. But hey, on top of that she also functions as a straight up damage boost to the equipped team. Overall, one of the best weapons to have and build. Our next weapon is Idun's Golden Apple, a main weapon that upon activation gives all allies a non-removable attack up buff for 3 turns and also grants them a non-removable regen buff that heals them by a fraction of the equipped team's max HP. The activation cost for her is 2 points, and the earliest you can activate her is turn 3. After that, she can be activated every 5 turns. While the heal is very nice to have, the main selling point of her is the attack up buff, it being attack up and not a damage dealt buff. If you want to know more about why this is better than just a normal damage buff, I can go more into detail into the damage calculation in another video if you want to. The newest weapon of them all is Mimispunner, a main weapon battery basically. Upon activation you gain a buff for 1 turn, and the very first skill or climbing skill that you cast during that time, that is not a support skill, will either generate more climbing points when you consume skill points, or will generate skill points when you consume climbing points. All allies will receive a non-removable debuff that increases the damage they suffer for 2 turns. The earliest you can use her is at turn 1 and she costs 1 energy to activate. After that she can be activated again once she got 5 energy points again stored. Her being a battery imp basically means that she's almost a necessity to use nowadays. Our second last weapon will be Guard of Indra, another main weapon that upon activation will grant all your allies a non-removable buff that increases their crit damage for 4 turns. Furthermore, you will get a non-removable crit rate buff that increases each turn gradually. She's easily one of the best weapons despite being one of the oldest ones. Her giving you more damage for 4 turns and on top increasing your crit rate makes her to this day irreplaceable. And finally, the best of them all, Ouroboros. No, not the VTuber, you simp. She's a support weapon with an effect so simple yet so impactful. Whenever the equipped team casts Climax skill, that team has a chance to reset its Climax skill usage afterwards, while also giving you 1 skill point back. At Max Awakening, the chance to reset the Climax usage of the team increases to 100% and you get an additional skill point back every Climax. This however works only for Climax skill that costs 10 or more Climax skill points. And after phase 2 this lowers to Climax skills with 8 or more Climax skill points. Not only do you get to spam out your most powerful moves with this weapon every turn, she also works as a battery on top of that, making her currently the most powerful weapon in the game, and the weapon every player should prioritize maxing out first.